Hello guys, welcome back. Now today, I'm going to be talking about Jack Hughes and what if he went to the Chicago Blackhawks. Now Jack Hughes is a projected #1 overall pick in the 2019 NHL draft, and the Chicago Blackhawks currently leading the tank war in the NHL. What would happen if Jack Hughes went to the Chicago Blackhawks, and how would he change the dynamic of that team? Now, the Chicago Blackhawks are the worst team in the NHL right now, and that is pretty much a confirmed statement. Right now, they have a 16-24-9 record. They have 41 points through 49 games, which, if you're checking the standings at all, is not good at all. And to also make the tank war more in Chicago's favor, they're currently on a 5-game losing streak. So right now, the Chicago Blackhawks in their season so far, it has not really gone to plan, and so far it has been a disastrous season, and one that might have been a better one for them going into the season. But with the Chicago Blackhawks, a lot of people predicted them to be bad. I predicted them to be maybe middle of the pack a little bit, but I didn't expect them to be all too great. And right now, especially with Corey Crawford injured, they're not playing well at all. And I think going into the season, I had them at 85 points, something like that, but I expected the Chicago Blackhawks to maybe be middle of the pack to get some points and to be better than last season, but I didn't expect them to be good at all. So while they're bottom of the pack, while I did expect them to be better, I'm not really surprised by how bad they've been this season. Now, the second worst team in the NHL is the Philadelphia Flyers. Right now, they have 42 points, but they also have 2 games in hand, so the Philadelphia Flyers are a little bit ahead of them in that respect. You also got the LA Kings, who have 41 or 42 points. They also have 1 game in hand. So for the Chicago Blackhawks, they have the worst amount of points in the NHL, but they also have games in hand on almost all the other teams in the bottom. So right now, it's definitely not looking good for the Chicago Blackhawks, but if they want to go after a guy like Jack Hughes or Capo Caco, this is certainly looking good for them. And it's kind of crazy to see how Chicago's came up to this point, because with the start of the season, it looked like they were kind of resurging. It looked like guys like Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane were looking amazing, looking like in their prime, and Corey Crawford was looking great. The overall team at the start of the season was kind of a little bit of a fluke there. We saw them maybe, I think they were in a playoff spot for a little bit. They were looking decent, but once Corey Crawford got injured, it just went completely down. And that's almost exactly how it went last season. Both the Chicago Blackhawks, it's been a little bit worse than that, and right now, they're practically tanking. And with the Chicago Blackhawks, usually with the NHL, the standings do change quite a lot throughout the season. Chicago was never the bottom of the league for quite a while. It was always LA, but now LA has started to play better. Philadelphia has started to play a little bit better. But now with Chicago Blackhawks, they're in this whole position of last place in the NHL. And right now, when it comes to getting Jack Hughes, that might be a pretty realistic opportunity. Now, if you guys watched my January 2019 NHL mock draft, you guys would know that while I do like Capo Caco a lot, I still have Jack Hughes as the #1 prospect in this year's draft. And whoever goes and whoever picks #1, I think is going to have a tough decision. But for most teams, I think they will go with Jack Hughes here. And I think Chicago is no exception. If they actually get that #1 overall pick, right now, I still see them going with Jack Hughes. And after Jack Hughes' impressive World Junior Championships with Team USA, he went back to the USDP, and he, in the last couple of weeks, has started to tear it up even more than he did before. Jack Hughes' season this season with the USDP was fantastic, but once he came back in the World Juniors, it seemed like he had another gear, and right now he's absolutely tearing it up. Right now in the USDP, he's played 28 games, getting 13 goals, 43 assists for 56 points, and right now he's at a 2-point per game pace, which is absolutely amazing. I think he had a 2-point per game pace last year, and that's why he got so much hype, but this year he's recreating that, and before, he didn't have a 2-point per game pace, but now he's really heating up and starting to get over that ledger. And as a Dallas Stars fan, it is certainly a scary thought to think about Jack Hughes on the Chicago Blackhawks. And it's a scary thought for the Central Division and the Western Conference. I mean, with Jack Hughes, I feel like he'd be a pretty solid fit on the Chicago Blackhawks. I think he'd be a better fit than on LA or Philadelphia. But with the Chicago Blackhawks, I feel like they have a lot of room to put a guy like Jack Hughes in their lineup. Their center core isn't exactly the best in the NHL. It goes Taves, and then Strome, then Anisimov, and then Kruger. So it's not exactly the most deep center group, and I feel like with Jack Hughes, he won't have any trouble fitting into that lineup. And for me personally, I think Kaapo Kakko is definitely a more NHL-ready player, but if Chicago gets that #1 overall pick, drafts Jack Hughes, I don't think they'll have a problem slotting him into that lineup, at least as the 4th center, at least as the 3rd center. I feel like he could definitely work in Chicago, and while he might not take the #1 spot from Taves for a couple of years, I feel like eventually he'll be a pretty solid bet with the Chicago Blackhawks and will play alongside Kane for years to come. And then there's the question of Jack Hughes and what his future would look like with the Chicago Blackhawks, and I think it would be a pretty solid one. While there's some teams like LA, maybe Philadelphia, that might be screwed for a couple of years, with Chicago Blackhawks, if they do get Jack Hughes, they might not be as screwed as some people might think. I mean, with Jack Hughes, I don't think he's a generational type player, but he's good enough to maybe lift a franchise into a better land, a better promised land. And with the Chicago Blackhawks, they do certainly need that superstar, youthful guy that they haven't had since Kane, since really Taves, and I feel like that would definitely boost their franchise. It would maybe make them into a playoff team, but still right now, I don't feel like Chicago Blackhawks are quite there, but getting a guy like Jack Hughes would certainly help. But with the Chicago Blackhawks, they're kind of in a weird state right now where they still have some solid players, but it's just not working for them as a whole team. And that's kind of in the same situation as the Chicago Blackhawks when Patrick Kane came in. It wasn't as dire of a situation. Obviously, the Chicago Blackhawks have some cups now, but I feel like with Jack Hughes, he would be coming onto a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 2 years, is kind of in a bad state, and could need a guy like him to come in. So for me, while I don't think that Jack Hughes would have a Patrick Kane impact when he came into the league, I feel like for the Chicago Blackhawks, he would be super influential for the team itself. And even if they do get Jack Hughes, he's not going to fix that defense. He's not going to fix that inconsistent goaltending. And for me, while Jack Hughes, yes, will be a great player and he will change a lot in Chicago, I don't think he can do that all on himself. I feel like guys like Jokiharju and Boquist will have to take the next step for Chicago to become a playoff team. And of course, for that goalie situation, it's not the greatest right now. Maybe Delia becomes their starter, who knows. But when it comes to Chicago, there are core problems in that team, but Jack Hughes could solve a lot of them. And for the Chicago Blackhawks, this would almost be a perfect time to get another 1st overall pick. I mean, with Kane and Taves, they're starting to get on the tail end of their career, especially Taves. And while Kane and Taves have both been pretty solid for the Chicago Blackhawks this season, I feel like we'll start to really see the decline in the next couple of years. And with Jack Hughes, of course, being another American-born player, I feel like with him playing with Patrick Kane, could be the toss of the torch for them, and of course for American star players. I feel like that would really work for Chicago Blackhawks, and having Jack Hughes to look forward to after Taves and Kane start to fall off, I feel like will be good for the fans and will be good for the team in general. And with Taves and Kane, Taves is like age 30 right now. I think Kane is like 29. So once Jack Hughes starts to get into his prime, and once he starts getting into those prime years, Taves will likely be 32 or 33, 34. Kane probably 32, 33. So those guys won't really be young at all. But Jack Hughes, once he starts getting that prime, once the team starts to build around him, I feel like that will start to be the beginning of a new era for the Chicago Blackhawks. And for Jack Hughes, for Chicago Blackhawks fans' sake, I hope he leads them to some success at least. But the future right now for the Chicago Blackhawks is not looking all too great. They got quite a few decent prospects, but the core that led them for that entire decade is now starting to deteriorate. Guys like Keith, Seabrook, Crawford, they're not what they once were, and while Kane and Taves are still producing, they're going to need more from that. And again, while their prospect pool is very, very solid, I still think getting that #1 overall pick and getting that superstar coming in is going to be huge for that team and that team morale going forward. And yes, while guys like Boquist and Jokiharju are nice for that Chicago Blackhawks squad, I feel like they're going to need that blue chip forward prospect. And whether they get Jack Hughes or Kaapo Kakko or somebody else in this draft, they're going to need to get that A prospect and that A forward prospect. And to me right now, if they were to get Jack Hughes, it wouldn't just change the present for the Chicago Blackhawks, it would change the potential and the future of that entire team. And we've seen it before with top prospects in the last few years. We've seen a guy like Austin Matthews change the whole team and change his whole team. We've seen guys like Jack Eichel in Buffalo turn that misery pit into somewhat of a playoff contender. We've seen that with some of the top picks, and while I don't think Jack Hughes will be an Austin Matthews, I think he might be close to it. And for the Chicago Blackhawks, to get that talented of a player would be huge for their entire future and for the next decade to come. Now, you guys know, the Chicago Blackhawks are my least favorite team in the NHL. I make that pretty much well known. But I also love to cheer for my American-born players, and I always want to wish them success. And while Jack Hughes might play well in LA, he might play well in Philadelphia if they get the first overall pick. I feel like for Jack Hughes to succeed, he really needs to find a spot and a team that is willing to give him the ice time. And I feel like with the Chicago Blackhawks, they don't have the greatest future, but getting a guy like Jack Hughes and then making him play with a guy like Patrick Kane, I feel it will do wonders for his career. And while I don't think that Jack Hughes will be generational, if he plays with Patrick Kane and gets surrounded by that Blackhawks culture, he could maybe get close to that. And that's all I'm really hoping for him. But again, in order for Chicago to actually do this, they have to actually win the lottery, which is not the easiest thing in the world. They first have to probably be in one of the bottom spots and actually get lucky. So it's not guaranteed to happen in Chicago, even though they're last place. They're not guaranteed to get Jack Hughes, but I still think it will be a pretty solid bet to bet on Chicago getting it, because honestly, I think it might happen. So again, while the Chicago Blackhawks are my least favorite team, I always got to root for my American-born players, and while I wouldn't like it if Jack Hughes went to Chicago, I think if Jack Hughes actually went to the Chicago Blackhawks, he would have a pretty amazing career, which, for me, rooting for my American-born players is really all I can ask. But of course, with this video, I want to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments down below. So let me know, what do you think about the possibility of Jack Hughes going to the Chicago Blackhawks? Would you be happy about it? Would you be sad? And of course, how do you think Jack Hughes would change the Chicago Blackhawks? But if you guys want some more Grav videos, you can watch this video where I discuss the Jack Hughes versus Capo Caco debate. But that is going for today, guys. If you guys enjoy, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. Again, comment down below your thoughts on Jack Hughes going to the Chicago Blackhawks. And I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Goodbye.